Welcome. Ah, that button came in handy. 20 dB dim. Oh yeah. So today we're gonna talk about Stream Deck and Reason, and we're going to talk about the song that I'm working on right now, which is now looping, and I'll show you a few tricks for the Stream Deck and what I've learned so far. I've only had it for a couple weeks, and I'll jump into that first. But before that, welcome to the live stream, the 12th live stream. I didn't think I'd make it through all 12, but I did, and I'll have to decide if I want to keep doing this next year or mix it up a little and do something different. But either way, this is the 12th of the year, December. The weather here has been pretty chilly. A couple of freezing nights, just above freezing today, but the sun is shining, so that always helps. And no snow yet, but it's just December 1st. We had some sprinkles about a week ago. What would it be called? Flurries, I guess. And up here in the Northwoods, the undisclosed location of Northwood Sound, or what am I calling it? Northwood House of Sound, House of Fun, something like that. So let's jump in and talk about what we have, the newest toy in the studio today. Let me just turn that off for the minute. And the Stream Deck is a great little programmable device that I'm just now getting to have some fun with. I've got it in the lower corner here. Still learning how to do that. That's funny because that's actually where it is on my desk. So you'll see my hand there. And I just got that zoomed in so that we can see that. If you want a close up, it looks like that. And hopefully I cleaned it off. There's a few smudges. So it does show finger grease, and it does need to be, you need to be looking straight on to it. I'm looking at an angle now because I have it flat for this video. It has a little stand that it comes with. And it looks like this. And it sits at too much of an angle, I think, for a lot of people. Feels more like I'm pressing a button in front of me instead of down, and it's got some rubber on the bottom, but I don't think it's enough to really secure it. I wish it had. I know one of their other models has an adjustable stand. I think it's a sort of thing that could easily be 3D printed, or just a hunk of wood cut to get it at that perfect intermediate angle. But it's otherwise a rock solid piece of hardware. Now let's talk about the software. The software is pretty impressive. It basically mimics the device. If I switch screens, it'll follow me. So this is the home page. Right now I've got a clock in the upper left hand there, and a date and day, December 1st, Thursday, right after 3 p.m. my local time. I also just downloaded a plugin for the Philips Hue lights. Oops. And one weird thing about it, it's not a application that you can see. It's kind of like a JavaScript app. So it pops up and it needs to be, I have to get to it by clicking on this. There may be another way, but normally I'm so used to tabbing to the next application that it's really confusing. Sometimes I still haven't gotten to this. A lot of times, now let's see, let me go to the Finder where I've got my folder open. And these are all the icons I've built so far. Let me just give you a quick tour of how I've been building icons. I'm a huge Keynote fan. I don't know what it is about Keynote that just works for me. It's like my playground, my coloring book. It's where every product starts its life, It's where flowcharts are made. It's where animations are made uh, for videos, and everything from ideas to final art in this case is easily made here. So this is actually the icon from the desktop for Reason, zoomed up and then cut out, the background cut out and just placed on top of one of my generic gradients. These are all pretty saturated, the colors here on the left, because they don't look that saturated on screen. And there's a little bit of reflection from the lights, but I think you can see that let's compare here. That the blue for the lighting setup called dark blue, some of them look the same. Others look less intense. The yellows and the oranges fade quite a bit. The blues don't look so much different, but that's to be expected. Otherwise, it's high resolution. Even with the type that small, I can easily read it from any position. And let's see to, oh yeah, the Philips lets me change the lights. And you're probably not going to see that unless I'm doing this. You're not even going to see it then. There, bam. So there's a lot of different plugins that you can get now. MIDI is another one. The clocks are time and analog clock. The weather didn't work. I thought I was doing something right, but you may need a subscription for that to work. I thought that would be another great thing to have on the home page. So far, my home page is the top row is going to be miscellaneous things I need there all the time. The next row down is going to be my application. So you see Luna and Reason are the only two I have. I might do Keynote as well if I find some useful things there. And then I have a generic transport along the bottom. This is good because it works off the space bar. So if I am in even the Finder and I just close the folder, but if I had a file with a song on it, I would think there would be one. Okay, well, I know there's some right here. So I could just hit play on the screen deck. Let me show you the screen though. And then I can use arrow keys, which I don't have here, but if I did, play a different one. So because I'm just using spacebar for that, it works in here. It works if I'm looking at YouTube videos, etc., anywhere that uses a spacebar. And the rest are there, but they're probably not going to do anything expected. I just copied them over to have them as a starting point. So I believe my constant is going to be the transport along the bottom. Now, when I switch, I should have these set up to switch, but I think I have to be in one of them. So here's in Reason, and now I'll go to Luna. And I can't remember how I got, this was working one day and then it's not working. It worked earlier and now it's not working. I'm not sure. I thought I had them set up correctly. Let me just describe anyway my setup here. And again, I'll make this on the screen to make it even more obvious. When I go into Reason, I've got along the bottom, I've got the transport and I've got two extra buttons. This one is the home button on the lower left. That takes me back to the home screen. The one on the lower right takes me to the next page, where it's a little bit of a different setup. I'm still trying things out. Then there's another page here where I'm building things. I think I have 4 pages. And then on the 4th page, I haven't copied my transport buttons in yet. I go home or backwards. So home. So that's how I navigate through the pages. What I'm trying to do is figure out what I need on each page. And there's a lot of different things that I can do. And there's there's different ways to do things. Let me just show you an example. For example, these arrow keys here are the keyboard, the alphanumeric keyboard arrow keys. And they just send, it's the same as typing it on the keyboard. On the next page, I have a set of arrow keys, slightly different. These are Mackie Control arrow keys. Now, the difference is Mackie Control is bidirectional. So let me show you the transport as one example. If I hit, let me go back to the first one. If I hit play here, nothing happens because I'm in there. If I hit play, so that's one example of, so this is basically just the space bar like on the home page, which means if I'm not in Reason and I hit that, nothing will happen. I have to be in Reason and hit that. And if I'm in another app, this will work just like the home key, the home page works, because it'll launch YouTube or Finder files that are audio files. So the advantages here are that it's useful in multiple places. But you'll notice the buttons don't change. They don't reflect anything. So here are the same set with the Mackie Control buttons. Much more satisfying. It lights. Goes into record too. Loop or not loop. Watch the screen. You'll see that the down here at the transport, the buttons all light up as I'm pressing them. Now the difference is these two are the traditional rewind and fast forward buttons, because the Mackie Control rewind is like a tape machine. You hit rewind and it starts going, and it's like holding the button down. It starts doing that and you have to press it again to stop. Also, the arrow keys for the Mackie Control do the same thing as the rewind and fast forward buttons. So I'm probably going to overwrite these buttons here with something more useful. So that means there are, well, those are two of the three ways that we can control things. So in one case, I'm sending key commands from the typewriter keyboard. That shows my age. From the alphanumeric keyboard, from this keyboard. And in the case of Mackie Control, I'm sending MIDI commands that are understood to be Mackie Control. So I had to go into Reason and set up a Mackie Control device. And I had to create IAC drivers to and from that, which was not anything difficult. It was like 5 minutes of a YouTube video and I'm good to go. And now the other downside, remember I said that the spacebar technique works in other programs, but it won't control Reason. And Mackie Control will control Reason even if I'm not in Reason. So if I'm over here in Keynote and I press the play button that's the Mackie Control button, it'll still work. But if I go back to the spacebar button, it won't. It'll do whatever spacebar would do in Keynote. Actually, that shouldn't be up. Won't do anything here because it's just like hitting the spacebar. So that's one difference. There's a third thing you can do, and it's with the MIDI, and it involves sending a note. And in this case, I'm sending, I need to find an instrument that will play. I have a button called Audition C136. MIDI note number 36. There it is. Audition C1. It is basically a MIDI note on and off. This guy right here in the MIDI pack, MIDI plugin. We can set multiple notes. We can set their on and off velocities. And we're saying now, in this case, the IAC driver is Stream Deck. So we have Mackie driver and Stream Deck driver. We can address them separately. The Stream Deck is going to send MIDI notes, and didn't think I had a big use for that, but one of the uses is being able to audition something, which I have that on peak, the hardware the hardware synthesizer that doesn't have a keyboard. It has an audition button, so you can still hear something and test the signal path, and that's where the idea for this came from. So whatever sound I'm on, at whatever track I'm on, let's see, it's something, here we go. It'll play that, whatever the slice is there on that. So all of these don't play, but many of them do. That's going MIDI out. So I don't know how useful that is, but I'll tell you where it did become useful, and that was to try to come up with a way to do the dim function on the Reason mixer. So let's go to the mixer, and I'll explain something else going on there in just a second. The dim function for the mixer doesn't have a button, doesn't have a key command, so I can't bind it to a key command, but I can give it a MIDI note number that it will respond to. So I'm using C0, so it's way down. I could probably use any MIDI note number, and if I played that on the MIDI keyboard, it would undim and dim. But I also was able to go to the Stream Deck and do a MIDI note for C0 right there. So the only weird thing about this is you can't type values in. You've got to scroll through the list and grab the actual note you want. Same for velocity. Oh, I don't want it to, there we go. Same for velocity. You can't type a value, but you can have it fire off multiple notes. And then there's different modes. None of these did exactly what I wanted, unfortunately. I don't know if you can see. Let's switch this. When this presses, that's what it's supposed to look like when it's not dimmed, and that's what it's supposed to look like when it's dimmed. Unfortunately, there was no mode between any of the modes here that would allow that to function the way I wanted it to. So basically you have two images, and one is for one mode, one press, and the other press. Now that works on the play buttons, as you saw, and so if you want to look at what those buttons look like, they are two icons, and that's why also, let me unzoom. That's why my icon pack here has a dark and a light for every version there. That's the stop button dark and the stop button light. Now, unfortunately, these aren't labeled, and I'm probably not going to go through and label them, but I'm going to share these with folks. Anybody who wants to use these that has a Stream Deck is welcome to, and I'll also be happy to, because it takes seconds to make these, even the more complicated ones like the click. Oh, by the way, this is also in, what is it? Mackie control, meaning it can light up to show me if the click is on or off before. The music's so loud you can't hear the click. Anyway, I love it that it gives me the visual feedback. Same for the loop button, is if it's going to loop, it'll be on. If it's not going to loop, it'll be off. And so you can tell at a glance. Now, ideally, here's my rant. Ideally, all the buttons would do this, but even I've found there's a Cubase and a new window plugin. I thought, oh, you just need to write a plugin. The SDK for the Stream Deck is available. I'm not sure how freely they hand it out, but it's available. So somebody who's smarter than me and more capable than me could be making a Reason plugin that would hopefully address these things, all of these things, without having to use Mackie control. And it would just appear on the side here. Like here's one for OBS. Here's one for Twitch Studio, because this is really for streamers. originally, but they made such a great general purpose product that it really, I've seen a lot of people use it. There's even under MIDI, there's even MIDI show control buttons, meaning that you could make this, as I understand it, a lighting control or a set control. With the MIDI note numbers, we could do things like fire off samples and musical sound beds, backgrounds, or sound effects. Crickets for my jokes would be a handy thing to have. Also, a wah wah. Maybe I'll add that next year. But for now, I just got a button that makes the kick go boom. Still fun. And it's because it's a USB connection, it's very, very instantaneous. The buttons sometimes I feel like they have too much throw, like you have to press them down a little farther than I'd like, but it's a very subtle, very minor thing. I'd rather them have a little more so you don't accidentally hit one. Okay, now let's go into some of the advanced things you can do. Let's see what we have. So these are, the concept here, by the way, is so far, don't hold me to this, every page is going to have the transport along the bottom and then something consistent along the top. My first thought was the tools, the arrow, the pencil, and let's see how that looks. It's very easy to see if I'm in the right page. So if we look at tools, right now I just have it so the arrow, pencil, razor, and mute button are called up, and of course you can't see that, right? And that's handy, but I'm not sure how handy that is. I rarely change those as I go, so I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that like that or not. Then the next option I came up with was the F keys, because we have 8 of them fit nicely across the top. So what I have across the top is the record meter, which is also has the tuner, the Spectrum EQ, F2, F3, the browser on and off, then the piano keys. Don't use that often, but I figured it was worth it. Then I have to skip this one. I'll show you over here. Then mixer, rack, and sequencer buttons. And just like with the buttons on the alphanumeric keyboard, the function keys, if I press rack and mixer, I get rack and mixer. If I press rack and sequencer, I get rack and sequencer. If I press all 3, I get all 3. And then press one of them, and I'm back to any one of them. That's very handy. Now, let me back up here and show you what this button up here at the top is called. It's the fun button. This is where it gets deep. This is the multi-action button. Random action. Oh my gosh. Well, that's going to be a fun one to play with. I didn't think that could have implications for MIDI notes or any other things. Oh, before I didn't mention this on the MIDI, but there's also a MIDI script button, which lets you do, I would say, contact style scripting, so that I could transpose things with that button. I could shoot out chords. I could harmonize with chords with that button. I can make things delay and come out later. I'm not sure what all you can do with scripting yet, because I've just scratched the surface, but you do have that as well. So back to multi-actions. This is in the Reason Talk thread on Sharing is Caring Stream Deck, Joey Luck mentioned something about, can it do this? And yes, it can. I don't have the icon in there, but I can show you how easy it would be to put that in. So we have rack and sequencer, and then we have a button where mixer should be. It is mixer, but it does 2 things. And I think I need to show it to you this way. When I click it, it's going to go into mixer view in Reason and switch to the next page in Stream Deck. So this would be my mixer page. And then if I hit rack, it would do the same thing. It would take me to the rack. Now I have to go into Reason to show you this in action. So if I'm in the sequencer page and I hit the mixer button, it goes to the mixer view, and more importantly, it switches me here to whatever buttons I want for when I'm in mixer view. Then I would hit rack and it would be another multi button. There's a multi button there. Rather than punch it randomly, because I don't know what it is, I can come over here and click it. 2 actions. What does this do? F5 and switch profile. That's mixer and switch profile to, we can see what profile it switches to. Profile page, Reason page 4. So there's not a switch page, there's a switch profile, but within that you just keep the same profile. I only have 3 right now, and then you switch pages within that profile with this button. So I'm exploring that still. Now, moving stuff around is really easy. If I wanted to swap those positions, I would do that, and they would swap automatically. If I want to bring this to the next page, I think I can just do that. Yeah, and then I can put it here. And then let's bring this one back to 2. So I have this back here. Okay. So moving stuff around is easy. The only thing that's a pain is you cannot do a selection of buttons. I'm trying to drag and select. I can select one at a time. I cannot do shift and select either. It switches no matter what. Meaning that to put the transport over here or over here, I have to say copy, paste, and then repeat the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. So it's a bit of a pain in that sense, but you're not going to do this very often. So it's not, it's a little bit of setup, but it's not something you're going to do all the time. Although I can tell you, whipping out a quick button when you need it is not a problem. You just click on the space and drag something in, like a, not a navigation, just a regular, where's my, oh, hotkey. Hotkey is just the basic whatever we're assigning it to. So let's say we want it to select all. So click there, select all. We can call it all, and then we can give it a color. Then we probably want to make that text black, and we could also hide the text as well. Let's move it to the center. All right, so that's what I would do. That would select all, but you have to be somewhere. If we're here, it would select all of these icons because it's a common Mac keyboard command. So again, some of these are going to be useful when you're outside of Reason. Some are only going to be specific to Reason. Like for example, when I'm here, I select all. It will select all of the tracks because look at the blue highlight around here. If I was in this area with the blue highlight around the sequencer and select all, it would select all the objects here. Let's go back though. That just shows you how easy it is to make a button. Let's see what other buttons I have. Let me just, well, obviously the top one's tool window. It's the only one I didn't show you. Edit mode would take us into blocks when we're in that, and it's, I don't know how to get out now because that's not supposed to happen. What I would normally have it do is click on that, click on a clip, and then go into edit mode, and then do something like select all. Where is my select all button? I've moved stuff around. See, this is where I'm still working it out. And what I'm doing, by the way, my process is I have notes over here of things that I typically do. Sequencer, select all, zoom to all. That's what I was trying to do right here. I would hit sequencer, which I already have, and select all, and then where's my zoom to all? Maybe it's over here. Oh, this is what I was looking like. Zoom to selection. Thank you very much. That didn't really work too well, did it? Then zoom out horizontally and zoom in. This is the timeline zoom in. And then smaller vertical and bigger vertical, which here will affect the MIDI notes. If we go out of edit mode, it would affect the track sizes. The up and down arrows would move me through the clips here, and left and right as well. And if I'm over here, the up and down arrows would take me through the tracks. That's actually pretty handy. Now, if I'm in the rack, that doesn't work. It takes me through the devices, but it's not taking me through the sequencer. What I mean is, if you'll notice, I'm selecting the redrum, but I'm not doing that. That doesn't change. So if I use the keys that were in the Mackie control, the up and down arrows actually do change when they can. A device, and these are all, there we go. There's one. Because they're changing the tracks in the sequencer. Oh my gosh, I'm still so slow to get around. So just like we would do that note audition there or we can't hear those. There. The same thing from my MIDI keyboard. Here, I would be able to use this to address whatever sound. Now, some of these buttons are redundant because I have my computer keyboard right here. So why do I need these other buttons? And I'm not sure yet. What I'm trying to figure out is what I need and where do I need them. And all I've done so far is figure out how to make something work. So I can turn MIDI sync on and off right now. I can quantize, I can select something and quantize it now. I can undo and redo. I can mute. Oh, I didn't show you this one. Mute and solo. So this is happening at the track level, not the mixer level, because that's how the Mackie control works. So I can go to a track, mute it, go to a track, mute it, or solo it, mute, unmute. So I have this kind of focus, mute and solo. I don't know how useful that's going to be. I think I have a record arm command I can fire up too for one of the buttons. So what I'm doing to find out if they're really useful or not is just putting them on the interface and then starting to mess with it and trying to figure out how it's going to make sense, or if it's going to make sense to me. One thing's for sure, having the save button is really nice. And if that was a bi-directional button, that would be even nicer, because if you know, I know Windows is similar, but on a Mac, if you edit something, then this little red dot appears there to tell me I've changed something and I can save it. On other hardware controllers I've had that have had a save button, they light up when this thing lights up. So basically my save button would have two states, a dark and a light version. It would be dark until I moved something somewhere and need to save it. Then I would hit save and it would go dark again. The same should happen ideally for undo and redo. Undo, it shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't be lit until there's something to undo. So, and then the same for redo. Once you hit undo, redo lights and undo goes out, but only if there's no more undos in the queue. So Some of the buttons, this is click using the key commands, and of course it won't show me if click is on or off, so I'm probably going to get rid of that one and go back to the one that shows me when the icon is on. It shows me if the click is on. Same for loop. I've already done that. I've already patched this button to the page with the traditional transport. And I'm just going to start moving stuff around until I find out a place that it all works for me. And like I showed you, it's pretty easy to move stuff around. And because of the fact that you can make buttons that do multiple functions, you can actually get moved around pretty automatically. Speaking of multiple functions, let me show you one that's my favorite, because this is something I requested years ago, and now I can actually have it. A lot of times when I'm recording an idea, I suck at it at first, but I don't dare not record. And a lot of times when I have ideas, my brain is going so fast, I don't want to stop and have to do certain things. So I thought, what I need is a button that's called Do Over, and I have it right here. And what it does is it does the things I would normally do after failing to get a take. Let me just give you an example. Let's say I go into record on this track. Do-over button. Do-over. So here's what it does. It starts me over again. I'll tell you exactly what it does, or I'll show you exactly what it does. It does multiple things. Do-over has 4 actions, and there's little pauses in between them. The first thing it does is it hits stop. When I say do over, I want to stop, I want to undo, and I want to return to where I just started, and I want to go back and record. There could be a secondary do over button that leaves off that record, that just stops me and sends me back so I can pause and think. There's also the chance that I could turn on the pre-count so I wouldn't have it just start cold. I'd at least get 4 clicks before it went back into record to kind of gather my thoughts and be ready. But it's so handy when you're trying to work out an idea to just be able to hit that button. I mean, I got so used to doing stop, undo, shift, return to go back to where I was, and then record again. And I realized I was doing that so often, that same exact sequence, that wouldn't that be a great function? Well, nobody's added that to their software yet, but I've added it now because of this. And I probably need a better icon. I'm leaving this, this is their icon. This is just to remind me that it's a multi-action. Kind of like a little bit more than the normal button, so be careful. And also, since it's doing these one-way dumb keyboard commands, if I were to hit it when I'm stopped, it's going to do something different than it's designed to do. So that's how we get back out of that. So any multi-action, any action over here can be dragged into the multi-actions, including, I would think, no, I don't see it. I thought this could get really weird. I was going to say it could have another multi-action in it. No, we can put a delay in, but these actually have delays. They're all at their preset values of 100 milliseconds. 100 milliseconds between each action. I think without those, it could miss one of these because it's basically going to fire them off probably within a millisecond of each other, but in order, but still too fast for some programs. So this little delay between them is really handy. I have yet to explore that beyond this button and then the one I said before. the mixer button, which should actually be there, which takes me to the mixer and the mixer view in Reason, and takes me to the next page or the appropriate page in the profile. And I'm not sure how that's going to lay out. Probably if you were asking me again in a month what I'm using this for, you would see a completely different layout, because this is so new and I'm still just trying to get the basics of it figured out and find out when is it useful. But I've always loved having a transport. So I'm really happy to have that there. Let's talk about the mix. I didn't want to get totally off into the Elgato land. And sorry about I'm seeing comments about screen sharing. And now I'm seeing a question: do I use the control room out? Oh, the reason my mic is soft is because I'm not on it, and because I need to dim Reason. There we go. So now I can talk over it. Yeah, you'd think as an audio engineer I'd know these things, but here, I can also crank up the mic on the LA2A. Yeah. Do I use the control room out? Let's see. Am I using it? No. But what I have used it for in the past is the sampling input. I just haven't modified my default. So my default song comes up looking like this. I have the click lowered, I have the click on, I have send clock on, and I have my mastering suite, which is simply Ozone and Uline. Ozone Elements too. It's very simple. And a front panel of 2 knobs. This one usually goes up. This one usually goes up. And that's it. That's usually all I do, is some widening, and I don't usually EQ in the master because I've got that set in the mix. The other thing I do is I set the big meter to on and to the output of the big mixer. It defaults to showing you input. I like to see the final output. I find this very useful, and I've set it to peak plus VU mode so I can see the crest factor basically by comparing the two. And also, this has blocks that are pre-entered. So these are intro, verse 1, pre-chorus, chorus, intro 2, verse 2, all the way to chorus 5 if you need it, tag, outro, and end. And that is basically every song structure piece that I usually would possibly use. And then down here, these were some library projects I was working on where they needed a main mix, an instrumental mix, a cut down, which is 30 seconds long, and then a bumper with the sting, which is about 10 seconds long, and the sting ending, which is usually just a few seconds long. But I would want them to all be the same, on the same timeline. So I would just mark them with these markers. So the main mix block would just be, I'm just using these as markers, by the way. The main mix block would just be there so that when I needed to re-export something, I could just click on the main mix and then set the loop to reflect that mix. It wouldn't be here, it would be like here. Let's say that was the main mix. I would just select that, put my loop markers on that with Command L, and then export loop as audio. And then the next one would be down here, would be the instrumental version, same length, but I would mute out the tracks, basically copy everything over. And that way, if I wanted to EQ the kick sound, it would EQ the kick sound for every version. And having these in my song starter, which is right here, I just call it startup 12 reason, because I changed it slightly when the new combinators came out, and I didn't want to destroy the original startup. And I just put this in my refill folders, and I put a little underscore at the front so it's always at the top of the list. And then if I need to make a change, I'll just create a new file, make the change, and then save it as this. And that's done by simply hitting save, going for, I don't know where I put it now. Oh, because I've lost my, oh, I haven't updated. Okay, so this is a new Mac. I haven't updated all my files. I should be able to come over and go to the, this one, Reason Refills, where the song file would be at the start. Right there it is. And there's the original startup. There's startup version 12. And I just saved them in the refill folder because I know where that is, and that's the easiest place to find it. And then if I back up or save the refill folder or move it to a new computer like I did recently, these files will be there. Okay, but let's get out of here and look at this mess, and I'm going to just walk you through this mix. This is a mix that's not common, a type of song that's not common for me, but let me show you what I've done. This started with the chords as far as the idea, and that sweep sound is the newest thing. So that's going through my Vox amp from the Peak synth. Love stuff like that. So these chords here, I basically just put those chords into the sequencer. There's the big version. Octaves and detune and stereo spread. Oh, this is a cool little trick. For the part where they start, they're mono, but I still needed two because these are panned. Actually, this should say chord stabs L for left and chord stabs R for right. So by making these two the same at the front, then it's mono in the middle, and then by taking this one and transposing it 20 cents up, and this one is 0. Huh. Well, I usually do a plus and minus. That's interesting. So it should be a little sharp overall. Is it? I don't know. Doesn't sound sharp to me. And anyway, so this one only kicks in here. So it goes from the mono version automatically to stereo without having to do any automation. You can hear that this one doesn't change much, just octaves. It's this one that gives it that big, get wider on the chorus. Hear that in context. I'm also doing some tricks with automation where when this comes in, it starts a little louder, and then it kind of gradually gets soft. And the same thing down here for the ARPs. When they first come in, they start a little louder, and they gradually get softer. Then the whole thing gets bumped up for this track. Well, I'm sorry, looks like it gets bumped down. Yes, you can see it here. The default volume is 593, and then it goes down to whatever that is, 562. Oh my gosh, I have to do a little rant about levels. This is controlling the fader and the mixer. This is a little, see the green around here and the ARPs there, and then that was the Peak Vox amp. It's also automated. So those are the stabs, the peak box amp, and then the overall peaks are all automated. It's not only frustrating that the numbers when you automate don't mean anything logically, but they don't scale correctly either. So I used to do this. I don't recommend people doing it. I would normally say if this track was too loud, here's what I would do. I would join all these together, and the spaces in between are now joined, and then I would extend it all the way through. Then I would select all the points and then just drag them down. Now, let me undo all that, because that doesn't do what you think it does. The relationships, when I drag that down, it should be adding or subtracting equally, and it does in the 0 to 1,000 scale, which is the scale of these numbers here. That goes up to 1,000 and down to 0. Unfortunately, when you grab a whole section and raise or lower it, the relationships in decibels between the low and the high levels are not consistent. And that is not what you want. If you have a section that goes up 3 dB and then a section that goes back down to where it was before, and you scale it and then it's no longer going up 3 dB, that's not correct. That's any other plugin, including one of the reasons why I made SeligAudio was so that I would have decibels to automate, and also when you scale, it will scale proportionally accurately. It's actually not proportionally, is it? Anyway, it keeps the relationships the same and just lowers the overall level. And so that's one reason why I automate the main fader, but if I need to do a global move, I will do it somewhere else, anywhere else. You can do it usually in the insert point with a SeligAudio or other, even a line mixer will work for that, because it's going to be proportional. I keep saying proportional, and I don't know if that is the right word. It's going to be the way you want it to be. If you do it in the automation, grab all the automation points and scale them up or down, then it's not going to be what you might expect from any other DAW. So when people say, well, why do professionals not like Reason? What's wrong with it? That's one of the things. You can't automate your fader in decibels, and they don't scale correctly if you add or subtract to the automation points by dragging them up or using the arrow keys to move them up or down. So my rant is over. The idea here, by the way, is a simple arranging concept where when an instrument first comes in, it's presented a little louder, and then gradually it settles back in, and then the next instrument comes in and it comes in a little louder, and then it settles back in. That just helps the listener, recognize or acknowledge the new thing in the mix. And after you've heard it, if it's repeating, you don't need to hear it as loud anymore. So you're making room in the mix for the next thing to come in. In a track like this, where I'm really trying to go for high levels overall, I'm doing all I can at the little micro level to make little automation adjustments to keep things interesting. I went in a circle on this one too, by the way. When I first started, I had this amazing explosion of sound through this kit here. When that came in, it used to just hit so hard, but then I started adding other things and I needed to make room, and I lost it. And so I had to bring it back. I had to lower the amount of saturation I was adding. I was crapping it out too much. It sounded more like a torn woofer than a powerful woofer. I reduced the amount of compression here. Well, actually, I took it off completely. I had it on. I've taken it off completely now. I can probably turn it back on right there. Yeah, that works. Now, one thing I'm not doing on this track is I am not doing any side chaining. I've never, well, I won't say never. I've used that before, but I don't always, I try to find other ways to deal with it. I love it when the master compressor pushes stuff out of the way for you. There's a technique there that's worth talking about. I've maybe mentioned it before, but anytime you put two things into a compressor, the louder thing is going to push the softer thing back in the sense of what the listener will perceive. That might not exactly be what's going on always, but that's what the listener will perceive it. So that if you had your lead vocals and some harmonies and some background vocals going, when the lead vocal comes in, the compressor kicks down a little bit more because the lead is louder than everything else. And the effect is that the backgrounds get pushed out of the way every time the lead comes in, and the attack and release will determine how quickly those come in. And it's like side chaining, but it's not side chaining, and it's something that I think is, I tend to like the sound of it because it can be more subtle. So in this case, when the kick drum comes in, it's pushing everything else back a little bit automatically. And you do that. The theory is you do that by setting the threshold such that, if let's go back to the vocal example, if the background vocals are peaking at -12, you set the threshold at -12 and then make the lead vocal go up 6 dB hotter, maybe -6. But then the compressor is going to kick it back down to 12, let's say. So the vocals come in over the threshold and they get squashed down, and the effect is the lead is where it would have been anyway. Wherever the compressor puts it, that's where you adjust that so that the lead is sitting now where you want it to sit, and use the makeup gain to get it to sit right. But the backgrounds are going to be pushed out of the way, and then when the lead stops, the backgrounds will naturally come back up. And that happens anytime there's two things into the compressor. The control that you have over that is the louder thing pushes the softer thing back. Now, what's really happening is everything's getting pushed back, but the louder thing is enough louder so that once everything is pushed back, it's at the level you wanted it to be at all along. So if you want it to be at -12, but you set it to -6 and compress it so that it gets down to -12. Oh boy, this is a long-winded description of something that's really simple concept, but I need to do it justice, so I'll probably do it on its own. I'll create an example. I've got a perfect song now that I'm mixing in Luna that will be a great way to show that effect, because it's got some great harmonies that are sustaining across the lead, and then there's a wrapper too, so that when that happens, you will hear the effect as if you're automating. It's what used to be called poor man's automation, but it has a different effect. I don't know how to describe it. It's different than ducking, and it's different than automation. So I've not really gone too deep into the mix, and I'm running out of time to stay within my hour. I will probably just go out playing this one more time. And I'm trying to think of, was there anything else that I needed to cover on this? Let's see, the drums, you heard the drums. I'll just play it, solo a few things. Bass. Oh, this is the chorus bass. That's a perfect example of what I would call nasty bass, or a nasty track. And I ran this through the Vox amp after it was recorded, and I adjusted the filter. I can't remember if that was in the mini brute or an external filter. But that's just another layer that comes in. Then the latest thing I did was the sweeps, which are a sound from Hydrasynth. Let me just cue up to one of them. And they're kind of a work in progress. Audio rate panning, I love it. But it's only doing one of the oscillators, so it's not too over the top. And that was just one of those playing it along with the song, trying to get it right, and then finding a good one, and then pasting it in there, pasting it in there, and there, and then reversing this one. I think this is the oh, we're not hearing that out of the other one. Stand by. Wondered why I wasn't hearing that. That's the backwards one, I think. Yep. So that's just reversing the same one that happens before. I love doing stuff like that. Reusing stuff, manipulating it, bringing it back into the song at a later point, and trying to create elements that all sound like they relate to each other. I think I'll just sign off now because I'm at the point where I'm starting to ramble. I've covered the basics of Stream Deck, and I'm going to post my icons, my icon collection, the new winter collection here. I will post these with a Dropbox link shortly, and I think I've been changing these so much, but they're at least a good starting point. And if I make major changes, I will repost to that same thread and repost these updated graphics. As they are now, they're certainly usable. And if anybody also, I don't know how many Keynote users there are out there. If anybody wants this file, it's really handy because, for example, this background here is a generic, one of my 4 different backgrounds. This is the dark version for when the button is off for the transport, and this is the light version. By changing it here, by editing this one slide, I can edit all of the backgrounds that use this slide, and I don't have to go through and do each and every one. Now, unfortunately, I do have to, when I bring them into ScreenFlow, where are you? Stream Deck, not StreamFlow. You do have to drag them in one at a time, even when they're like all these red ones. I have to drag them in one at a time to update them. Here's another interesting thing. Turns out I accidentally found you can drag from Keynote directly. Not even sure how that works, but it just does. And so these are slides in Keynote. I just made them 400 by 400, so there'll be plenty of high resolution enough to scale down. And I can adjust the colors if anybody wants different colors. These are very basic. I can generate more icons if anybody needs different icons. And then once I make changes, I just can export all of these as images, and they'll all go into the same folder. And in fact, if I did it now and overwrote that, it would just it would update this folder with all the changes I've made. So it's that part of the process is super fast. It's so easy to do. And from there, dragging them in is a little bit of a drag, but it's not as bad as you think. Like I said, you don't do this all the time. So if it takes you 5 minutes to get everything the way you want it to, you won't have to do that again. I'm getting an interesting sound. It's not coming from the mic. It's probably because I didn't put things in airplane mode. I forgot. Oops. So I'll leave you with the song, and I will keep you posted what my plans are, if I'm going to be doing this more in the future. And if anybody has suggestions for what they'd like to see, as always, I'll be more than happy to accommodate. Until next time, have a happy, happy holiday and go make some music.